The check arrived on a silver tray, resting innocently between the crystal water glasses and the centerpiece of white orchids. It was a heavy cream-colored piece of cardstock folded shut, hiding the damage beneath. We were dining at Lauroni, the kind of place where the waiters wear white gloves and the menu doesn't list prices because if you have to ask, you don't belong. I definitely didn't belong. I was wearing my only good dress, a navy blue shift. I'd bought at a thrift store 3 years ago, trying to make myself as small as possible in the high-backed velvet chair. Across from me, my sister Bella was glowing literally and figuratively. She was draped in sequins, her engagement ring catching the candle light and sending sharp prisms dancing across the table. My parents, Leo and Rello, looked at her with the kind of adoration usually reserved for religious icons. I reached for my purse, a reflex honed by years of being the afterthought, the one expected to pay for her own side salad. Well, they ordered lobster. I can get my share, I said quietly, my hand trembling slightly. The dinner had been excruciating. 2 hours of listening to Bella talk about her royal vision for the wedding, about imported pays and silk runners, while my parents nodded and cooped. I had barely spoken. I was just the audience. I was just the prop. Leo chuckled a low, dry sound that grated on my nerves. He reached out his hand, manicured and heavy with gold rings, and slid the tray across the table, not toward himself, toward me. Put your wallet away, Clara, he said, his voice smooth, carrying that deceptive warmth he used right before he delivered a killing blow. We're not splitting the bill tonight. You're paying. I blinked, confused. I can't afford this, Dad. The wine alone was not the dinner bill. You idiot. Bella snapped her angelic facade, cracking instantly to reveal the spoiled brat beneath. She took a sip of her champagne, her eyes cold. Open the folder. I opened the leather folio. Inside, there wasn't a restaurant receipt. There was an invoice. It was printed on my father's company letterhead. My eyes scanned the line items, my brain struggling to comprehend the numbers. Catering deposit, venue reservation, floral retainer, custom silk import duties. I looked at the total at the bottom. The number was bolded, circled in red ink, $50,000. The air left my lungs in a rush. The restaurant noise, the clinking silverware, the soft jazz, the polite laughter seemed to fade into a dull roar. What is this? I whispered. That. Rello said, wiping a crumb from her lip with a linen napkin, is your contribution to your sister's happiness. Bella's vision has expanded as it should. She deserves the best. We've crunched the numbers and we're a little short on the liquid cash flow this month because of your father's investments. We need $50,000 to lock in the vendor for the reception. We know you have savings. I stared at her. Savings, Mom. I work as a junior landscape architect. I make $45,000 a year before taxes. I have maybe $3,000 in my bank account total. Leo's face hardened. The mask of the benevolent patriarch dropped. Don't lie to us, Clara. We know you've been hoarding money. You don't pay rent. You live in our basement. You eat our food. You use our electricity. For 5 years, you've been a parasite attached to this family, sucking resources that should have gone to Bella. It's time you paid your dues. I pay you rent. I protested, my voice rising slightly, causing a couple at the next table to glance over. I pay you $800 a month for a damp basement with no heating. I buy my own groceries. I haven't taken a dime from you since I was 18. $800. Bella scoffed, rolling her eyes. That's practically charity. Do you know what studio apartment in this city costs? We've been subsidizing your pathetic existence so you could play in the dirt with your little plants. And now when I need you, when it's the most important day of my life, you're going to be selfish. I don't have $50,000. I felt tears pricking my eyes, hot and humiliating. I can't give you what I don't have. Leo leaned forward. His eyes were like flint. Then takeout. Loan, you have good credit. We checked your mail. You have pre-approved offers. Sign one. Get the cash, give it to Bella. It's the least you can do after everything we've sacrificed for you. Sacrificed? I let out a jagged laugh. You missed my college graduation to go to Bella's dance recital. You forgot my birthday last week. You treat me like a servant in my own home. I'm not taking out a loan that will me for a decade just so Bella can have what? Imported silk runners. They are essential for the aesthetic, you jealous cow, Bella hissed. I'm not doing it, I said, pushing the folder back. My hands were shaking, but my resolve was hardening into something cold and sharp. I'm not paying for your wedding. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Leo didn't yell. He didn't pound the table. He just sat back, interlaced his fingers, and smiled. It was a terrifying smile. It was the smile of a man who held all the cards and was waiting for the perfect moment to play the ace. I thought you might say that, he said softly. You've always been ungrateful, Clara, always looking for a handout. Well, since you want to act like a stranger, we'll treat you like one. He pulled a second document from his jacket pocket. He unfolded it on the table next to the orchids. It was a real estate listing. A sold listing. I looked at the photo. It was our house, the house I grew up in. The house where I currently lived in the basement. We sold the house this morning. RRLO announced her voice, bright and cheery as if discussing the weather. The market is hot and we got a cash offer. We're downsizing. Well, upgrading really. We bought a condo in the city closer to Bella. It has a doorman, a gym, and 2 bedrooms. I did the math instantly. 2 bedrooms, one for them, one for Bella's guest room. Where am I supposed to go? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The new owners take possession tomorrow at noon, Leo said, checking his Rolex. We've already moved our things to storage. The movers are coming for the rest in the morning. Anything left in the basement after 10:00 a.m. goes to the dump. Tomorrow, I stood up my chair, scraping loudly against the floor. You sold the house without telling me you're evicting me with less than 24 hours' notice. You're an adult, Clara, RRLO said, sipping her wine. Figure it out. Maybe if you weren't such street garbage, you'd have a husband to take care of you by now. But look at you. Who would want you street garbage? The words hung in the air, suspended in the scent of truffle oil and expensive perfume. That was what Bella used to call me when we were kids. Whenever I came inside with dirt on my knees from gardening, I looked at them, my family. They weren't just indifferent to me, they actively despised me. They enjoyed seeing me squirm. They liked watching the panic rise in my chest. They had planned this dinner not to ask for money, but to corner me. They wanted to squeeze me dry and then discard the husk. I looked around the restaurant. The opulence felt nauseating. I thought about my bank account. $3,000. First and last month's rent in the city would be $4,000 minimum. I had nowhere to go. I would be homeless by tomorrow afternoon. Panic clawed at my throat, but then a memory surfaced. A small, faint memory from a decade ago. Grandma Dorothy, she was the only one who had ever loved me. The only one who didn't look at me like a mistake. When she passed, the family had fought over her jewelry, her stocks, her antique furniture. But nobody had wanted the cabin. The cliffside, I said. The table went quiet. Leo frowned. What? Grandma's old cabin on the coast. I said, my voice gaining a strange, desperate strength. The one near Harbor Pine. You guys always complained about paying the property taxes on it. You said it was a money pit. Bella burst out laughing. It was a harsh barking sound. That dump. It's basically a pile of driftwood held together by termite spit. It's been abandoned for 10 years. The roof is probably caved in. Give it to me, I said. I looked Leo in the eye. You want me out of your lives? Fine, I'll go, I'll disappear, I won't ask you for a dime. I won't come to the wedding. I won't embarrass you with my street garbage presence. Just sign the cliffside over to me. Leo looked at RRLO. They exchanged a look of sheer amusement. To them, I wasn't asking for an asset. I was asking for a burden. I was asking to take out their trash. You want that rotting shack? Leo scoffed. The land is unstable. It's practically sliding into the ocean. It's worthless. Clara, I've been trying to offload it for years, but nobody will. Buy it because of the erosion risks. It's a liability. Then let me take the liability off your hands, I said, in exchange for my share of the inheritance, I'll sign a waiver. I get the cabin. You keep everything else. The money, the stocks, the new condo, all of it. The greed in their eyes flared up. Like a match in a dark room, the inheritance was substantial. Grandma. Dorothy had left a trust that was supposed to be split between Bella and me when we turned 35. Giving that up meant giving up hundreds of thousands of dollars in the future. But I didn't care about the future. I needed a roof over my head now. You'd sign away your trust fund for a shack, RRLO asked, her eyebrows raising. You really are. Desperate deal, Leo said instantly. He didn't wait for a lawyer. He raised his hand and snapped his fingers at a passing waiter. Pen now. The waiter handed him a gold pen. Leo grabbed a linen napkin, but then thought better of it and grabbed the back of the wedding invoice. He wrote furiously, his handwriting jagged and aggressive. I, Leo Whitmore, hereby transfer the deed and ownership of the property known as the Cliffside at 42 Ocean View Drive, Harbor Pine to Clara Whitmore, effective immediately. In exchange, Clara Whitmore waives all rights to any future inheritance, trust funds, or financial support from the Whitmore family. He shoved the paper at me. Sign it. My hand shook as I took the pen. I knew this wasn't a legal deed transfer yet, but it was a binding contract of intent. It was the end of my life as a daughter. I looked at the paper. I looked at Bella, who was smirking at her reflection in her spoon. I looked at my mother, who was already browsing her phone, bored with the drama now that she had won. I signed my name. Clara Whitmore. Leo snatched the paper back, folded it, and tucked it into his pocket with a triumphant grin. He reached into his other pocket and threw a single rusty key onto the table. It landed in the butter dish. The keys are in the safe, but that's the spare I kept on my ring, he said. Don't come crying to us when the roof collapses on your head. You're on your own, Clara, completely. I picked up the key. It was cold and greasy from the butter. I wiped it on my dress, my good dress, the one I had tried so hard to keep nice for them. It didn't matter anymore. I won't, I said. I stood up. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. I walked out of Lorne, past the matry, who looked down his nose at my off-the-rack shoes, past the valet stand where exotic cars were lined up like jewels. I walked to the subway station because I couldn't afford a cab. I didn't have time to cry. I had to move. I got back to the house that was no longer my home at 9:00 p.m. The house was dark. They were still at dinner, probably ordering dessert, toasting to how they had swindled me out of my inheritance for a piece of rotten wood. I ran to the basement. I grabbed my suitcases. I didn't pack everything. I left the furniture. I left the old clothes. I took my gardening tools, my sketchbooks, my laptop, and the box of seeds I had been saving for a garden I was never allowed to plant. I hauled the boxes to my car, an ancient sedan with a dented bumper and a check engine light that had been on since Christmas. It took me 2 hours. By 11:00 p.m., the basement was empty. It looked like a cell. It looked like I had never existed. I sat in the driver's seat, the engine sputtering to life. The rain had started to fall, a cold, miserable drizzle that blurred the street lights. I looked at the house one last time. The windows were dark and hollow. It was a beautiful house. A perfect house, and it was filled with monsters. I put the car in gear and pulled away from the curb. I had $80 in cash, a full tank of gas, and a key to a house that might not even be standing. I was driving into a storm. I was driving toward a cliff. But as I merged onto the highway, watching the city's skyline fade in the rear-view mirror, a strange thought occurred to me. They called me trash. They called me garbage. They thought they had flushed me away so they could live their perfect, shiny lives. before I tell you how I turned their garbage into an empire that destroyed them, make sure you are subscribed. You're going to want to see the look on their faces when they realize what they actually gave me. I pressed the gas pedal. The road ahead was dark, but for the first time in my life, the steering wheel was in my hands. The drive to Harbor Pine was less of a journey and more of an escape. By the time I reached the coastal highway, the city lights had faded into a dull orange glow in the rear view mirror, replaced by the encroaching darkness of the forest and the relentless rhythm of the rain. My sedan shuddered against the wind coming off the Pacific, the headlights cutting weak tunnels through the downpour. I had no GPS signal. The blue dot on my phone had frozen 10 miles back. I was navigating by memory and the faded green road signs that appeared like ghosts in the mist. It was past midnight when I finally saw the turnoff for Ocean View Drive. It wasn't really a road anymore. It was a gravel track, swallowed by overgrown blackberries and looming spruce trees. The tires crunched over potholes deep enough to swallow a boot. I drove slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs until the headlights illuminated a structure at the very edge of the world, the cliffside. Bella had called it a rotten pile of wood, and in the harsh glare of my high beams, she didn't seem wrong. The cabin was listing slightly to the left. The cedar shingles, once a warm honey color, were gray and curled like dead leaves. The porch railing was missing in sections, looking like a smile with broken teeth. It looked sad. It looked abandoned. It looked exactly how I felt. I parked the car and stepped out. The wind hit me instantly, carrying the scent of salt spray and wet pine needles, a smell so sharp and clean, it made the city air I was used to feel suffocating by comparison. I grabbed my flashlight and the single greasy key Leo had thrown at me. I walked up the steps, testing each board before putting my weight on. The wood groaned but held. I slid the key into the lock. It refused to turn. I jiggled it cursed and finally used my shoulder to shove the door while twisting the metal. With a screech of protesting hinges, the door gave way. The inside smelled of stagnation. Dust moays danced in the beam of my flashlight. There were sheets over the furniture, draped like shrouds over the dead. I found the fuse box in the utility closet, praying the power was still connected. I knew Grandma's estate paid the bills automatically, but Leo had been so eager to cut ties. I feared he might have severed the utilities too. I flipped the main breaker. A low hum vibrated through the walls and a single bulb in the kitchen flickered to life. I was safe. I was alone. I slid down the wall until I hit the floor, pulling my knees to my chest. And for the first time that night, I let myself cry. I cried for the little girl who used to garden in the backyard, hoping her mother would notice. I cried for the 10 years I spent trying to buy their love with obedience. I cried until there was nothing left, just a hollow silence filled only by the sound of the ocean crashing against the rocks below. The next morning, I didn't wake up to an alarm. I woke up to sunlight streaming through a window so caked with grime it acted like a filter, turning the world sepia. I made a cup of instant coffee, using tap water that ran brown for a minute before clearing, and I took stock of my kingdom. The cabin was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a kitchen, and a living room with a massive stone fireplace. It was structurally sound, thanks to the old growth timber used to build it in the 20s, but it was filthy. The floorboards were hidden under layers of dirt. The wallpaper was peeling, but as I walked the perimeter, I saw what Leo had missed. The bones of the house were magnificent. The view from the back deck was a panoramic sweep of the Pacific Ocean, uninterrupted and wild. In the city, a view like this would cost $10 million. Here, it was just the backyard. I didn't have money for contractors. I didn't have money for new furniture, but I had rage and I had 2 hands. I started cleaning. I didn't just clean, I exercised the house. I scrubbed the floors on my hands and knees with a bucket of vinegar and water until my knuckles bled, and the wood turned from gray to a rich, warm amber. I tore down the rotting curtains that crumbled in my hands. I hauled bags of trash out to the road. It was grueling. Physical labor, the kind that makes your muscles scream and your mind go quiet. For the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about what Bella was doing or what Leo expected. I was thinking about the grain of the wood, the clarity of the glass, the integrity of the roof. On the third day, while prying up a loose floorboard in the master bedroom to fix a squeak, I found a metal box. Wrapped in oilcloth, inside were leather-bound journals, Grandma Dorothy's. Journals. I sat on the floor covered in dust and opened the first one. It was dated 40 years ago. Grandma wrote about the tides, the birds, the specific way the light hit the cliffs in September. But she also wrote about the family. August 12th, 1988. Leo came to visit today. He didn't look at the ocean once. He spent the whole time complaining about the drive and asking when I plan to sell. He sees land as numbers. He doesn't understand that land has a memory. He will never inherit this place. It needs a caretaker, not a calculator. I hope. Clara has my eyes. She's only 2, but she looks at the flowers, not the thus. I traced her handwriting with my finger. She had seen me. Even back then, she had seen me. Leo hadn't given me this place as a punishment. He had inadvertently fulfilled her final wish. That realization lit a fire in my belly that no insult from Bella could ever extinguish. By the second week, my savings were dwindling. I needed an income. I had set up my laptop on a majestic oak table I'd found under a tarp in the shed, using my phone as a hot spot to continue my freelance design work, but clients were slow to pay. I was outside wrestling with a massive tangle of invasive ivy that was choking the life out of an ancient rhododendron bush when I felt eyes on me. I turned around, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my glove. A man was standing at the edge of the property line, leaning on a walking stick. He looked to be in his 60s with a face weathered by salt and sun and a shock of white hair that stood up in the wind. He was wearing a flannel shirt that had seen better decades and heavy work boots. You're fighting a losing battle with that Ivy girl, he called out. His voice was like gravel in a mixer. You need to cut it at the root, not pull the leaves. I know, I called back, breathless. I'm trying to find the root, but it's buried under 10 years of neglect. He grunted and walked closer, limping slightly. He looked at the pile of debris I had already cleared, a mountain of dead vines and brambles. He looked at the house, which was starting to gleam under my aggressive cleaning regimen. Then he looked at me. You Leo's kid, he asked. The name came out of his mouth like a curse word. I'm Clara, I said, standing up straight. And yes, unfortunately, I'm Elia's, he said. I live next door. Used to watch your grandmother sit on this porch. She was a good woman. Your father is a jackass. I couldn't help it. I laughed. It was a genuine surprise sound. You won't get any argument from me. Elias cracked a small smile. I saw him here last week, speeding off in that fancy German car. Left you here with the rats. Something like that, I said. He gave me the deed. It's mine now. Elias raised an eyebrow. He gave it to you, fool, but lucky for you. He gestured with his stick toward the garden. I've been watching you work for 3 days. You know your plans. You're not just hacking away. You're pruning. I'm a landscape architect, I said, or I was in the city. Is that so? Elias looked thoughtful. My place, the estate up the hill. My wife passed 5 years ago. Since then, the gardens have gone to hell. I've got 5 acres of English formal gardens that look like a jungle. I fired the last 3 crews because they didn't know a weed from a wisteria. You looking for work? I looked at him. He didn't look rich. He looked like a fisherman, but the estate up the hill was a massive property I had glimpsed through the trees. I said 25 an hour, he said. Cash, you make your own schedule, but if you kill my hydrangeas, I feed you to the gulls. Deal, I said, extending a dirty gloved hand. He shook it firmly. That handshake changed my life. Elias wasn't just a neighbor. I learned quickly that he was Elias Thorne. a retired real estate attorney who had made a fortune protecting coastal lands from predatory developers. He was sharp, cynical, and fiercely protective. My days fell into a grueling but satisfying rhythm. I woke up at 5:00 a.m. to work on my freelance designs for city clients until noon. Then I walked up the hill to Elia's estate and worked in the dirt for 4 hours, restoring his magnificent gardens. In the evenings, I worked on the cabin. I was exhausted, my body aching in ways I didn't know were possible, but I was sleeping. For the first time in years, I didn't need melatonin. I didn't stare at the ceiling, wondering if I was good enough. I was too tired to be insecure. One rainy Tuesday, while hauling lumber to fix the porch steps, I heard a whimper coming from under the crawl space. I knelt in the mud and shone my flashlight. 2 golden eyes reflected back. It was a dog, a scruffy terrier mix, shivering and matted with a wire trapped around his leg. It took me an hour to coax him out with pieces of cheese. I cut the wire, cleaned his wound, and bathed him in the utility sink. He was skin and bones, terrified of his own shadow. "You and me both, buddy," I whispered, tolling him dry. "We're both strays." I named him Rusty. He slept at the foot of my bed that night, and he never left my side after that. When I worked in the garden, he patrolled the perimeter. When I sat at my computer, his head was on my foot. I had a companion, I had a defender. 2 months passed. The cabin was transforming. I had sanded the floors, painted the walls a soft, creamy white to catch the light, and restored the stone fireplace. I had used my design discounts to order simple, elegant furniture, a deep linen sofa, sturdy wooden dining table. It wasn't the gilded, soulless luxury of my parents' penthouse. It was warm. It was real. It was a home. Then the phone rang. I looked at the screen. "Mom," my stomach tightened, that old reflex of fear kicking in. I took a deep breath, looked at Rusty, who perked his ears up, and answered. "Hello, Clara." Ararlo's voice was tiny and sharp. No greeting. "No, how are you? We're finally settling into the new condo, and I need you to come back to the city this weekend." "Why?" I asked, keeping my voice flat. Elias had taught me about this gray rock, he called it. Be as boring as a rock. Don't give them emotion. They feed on it because we found a box of your old things in storage. High school yearbook, some trophies, that old quilt. We don't have space for it. The new aesthetic is very minimal. Come get it or I'm putting it on the curb." "Put it on the curb," I said. There was a stunned silence. "Excuse me." I said, "Put it on the curb or donate it. I'm not driving 5 hours for a box of high school memories. You are so ungrateful." Ararello spat. "We are trying to be nice. We kept this for you. Bella is so stressed with the wedding planning. She's about to have a breakdown, and you're just sitting out there in that shack doing nothing. You should be here helping her. You're her sister. I'm busy mom. Busy doing what?" "Watching the paint peel. Leo says you're probably living on food stamps by now. Admit it, Clara. You made a mistake. Just apologize to your father. And maybe he'll let you move into the servants' quarters in the building. You can help with the wedding logistics too. Pay your rent." The sheer audacity made me want to scream. They wanted a servant. They wanted their punching bag back because Bella was probably driving them insane. "I'm fine, Mom," I said. "I have a job. I have a home. I don't need your servants' quarters." "A home," she laughed. "That rotting pile, please, Mark." "My words, Clara. When winter hits, you'll come crawling back and we won't be so generous next time. Is that all?" I asked. "You're a cruel girl," she said. "I don't know where you got it from." "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up. I didn't shake. I didn't cry. I looked out the window at the ocean, churning and gray and powerful. I felt lighter. I went out to the porch. Elias was walking up the driveway, holding a thick envelope in his hand. He looked grim. "Everything okay?" I asked, stepping down to meet him. Rusty trotted out too. Greet him, tail wagging. Elias handed me the envelope. It was heavy. The return address was the State Department of Coastal Zoning and Development. "This came to my house by mistake," Elias said. The mailman still gets our lots confused. What is it? I asked, turning it over. A condemnation notice. Did Leo know the foundation was bad? Open it, Elias said. His voice was uncharacteristically soft. I tore open the seal. I pulled out a stack of documents, maps, zoning charts, and a cover letter. Dear Ms. Whitmore, regarding the property at 42 Ocean Drive, the Cliffside Estate, we are pleased to inform you that the 10-year moratorium on commercial eco-development in Sector 4 has been lifted, per the new City Council ruling, passed last week. Your property has been redecided from residential high erosion risk to prime mixed-use hospitality. I scanned down the page, my eyes blurring until they hit a number. Evaluation assessment attached to the zoning change. Estimated unimproved land. Value $4,500,000. I stopped breathing. I looked at Elias. I knew it was coming. Elias said, leaning on his stick, a mischievous glint in his eye. I was the one who petitioned for the zoning change 3 years ago for my own land. It covers your lot, too. That rotten shack sits on the only stable granite shelf in the county. 4.5 million, I whispered. Leo thought it was worth nothing. Leo is an idiot, Elias grinned. He looked at the mud on the surface and didn't check the rock underneath. He handed you a lottery ticket, kid. Winning one, I looked at the letter, then at the house. My rotten house. My sanctuary. They don't know, I said. No, Elias said, they don't. I looked at the date on the letter. It was dated yesterday. And I'm not going to tell them, I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. Not yet. Good, Elias said, because the sharks are circling. And you're going to need a bigger boat. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. The wind howled around us. But I didn't feel the cold anymore. I felt powerful. Elias, I said, do you own a suit? I have a tuxedo I haven't worn since the 90s, he grunted. Why? Because, I said, looking toward the city skyline, hidden behind the horizon. My sister is having a wedding and I think we should go. The envelope from the zoning commission sat in the bottom drawer of my grandmother's oak desk, buried under a stack of seed catalogs and garden sketches. It was a piece of paper, lightweight and unassuming, but it weighed $4.5 million. Knowing it was there changed the molecular structure of the air in the cabin. The drafty windows didn't feel like signs of poverty anymore. They felt like charming quirks of a multi-million-dollar estate. The creak in the floorboards wasn't a defect. It was the sound of equity. Elias sat on my porch the morning after the delivery, sipping coffee from a chipped mug. The storm had passed, leaving the sky a bruised purple that reflected off the calm ocean. You can't tell them, he said, his voice growly and serious. Not yet, I want to rub it in their faces. I admitted tearing a piece of toast in half for Rusty. I want to drive to their new condo, slap that letter on the marble countertop, and watch them choke. And then what? Elias asked, looking at me. Over the rim of his glasses. They sue you. They claim you manipulated Leo into signing the deed. They drag you into court for 5 years, draining your energy and your joy. Leo has friends in low places. If he knows this land is a gold mine, he will burn it to the ground before he lets you keep it. Knew he was right. Leo was a man who would rather rule over ashes than serve in heaven. If he knew I had one, he would destroy us both. So we wait, I said, we wait. Elias nodded. We let them dig the hole deeper. Rumor has it Leo's investments are bleeding out. He put a lot of capital into a tech startup that's currently under investigation for fraud. He's leveraged to the hilt to pay for this wedding. How? Do you know that? Elias winked. I'm retired, Clara. I'm not dead. I still have lunch with the sharks in the city once a month. They smell blood in the water, and the blood type is Whitmore. The trap was set. All I had to do was nothing. For the next 3 weeks, I lived a double life. To the world, and specifically to my family, I was Claire the exile, living in squalor in a rotting shack, probably eating beans out of a can. In reality, I was Clara the Aries, sitting on a fortune building. a landscaping business that was already gaining traction with Elia's wealthy friends and sleeping soundly every night with the ocean as my lullaby. I watched the disaster unfold from a distance. My cousin Jessica, who loved drama almost as much as she loved free drinks, became my unwitting informant. She posted updates constantly. Wedding dress fitting. Bella is screaming at the seamstress because the lace isn't French enough. Bridzilla. H, help me. Uncle Leo trying to sell his boat says he wants to simplify. We all know he needs the cash for the catering. Hash awkward. Then the summons came. It wasn't a phone call this time. It was a formal digital invitation sent to my email, followed immediately by a text from RRLO. Family reconciliation. Dinner, Tuesday, 7:00 p.m. The Onyx Room, mandatory attendance. We have a proposition for you. Do not be late, and please dress appropriately. No gardening. Rags, I showed the text to Elias. He laughed a dry barking sound. Proposition. That means they want something. They probably want me to sign a waiver for the wedding photos so they don't have to blur my face out if I accidentally walk into the frame. I joked. No, Elias said, his eyes narrowing. They're desperate. Desperate people don't ask for waivers. They ask for labor or money. You're going. I am, yes, and I'm coming with you. As what, my grandfather, as your legal counsel, Elias said, standing up and brushing crumbs off his flannel shirt. Though I doubt they'll realize that. To them, I'll just be the old coot from next door. It's better that way. Let them underestimate us. It makes the victory sweeter. Tuesday arrived with a gray, drizzly sky. That matched my mood. I dressed with strategic precision. I wore a black turtleneck and wide-legged trousers. 2. The untrained eye, the outfit was simple, boring even. But the wool was cashmere, sourced from a sustainable boutique I had discovered online, and the trousers were tailored perfectly to my frame. I wore no jewelry except for a small pair of pearl studs I had found in Grandma's jewelry box. The ones RRLO had overlooked because she thought they were fake. They weren't. Elias picked me up not in a truck but in a vintage 1968 Jaguar Ipe. It was British racing green, pristine, and roared like a lion. I keep it under a tarp in the barn, he explained as I slid into the leather bucket seat. Leo thinks I'm a pauper because I wear flannel. He forgets that lawyers in the 80s made a killing. We drove to the city in silence, the engine purring beneath us. When we pulled up to the Onyx Room, the valet's eyes widened. He treated the car with more respect than he treated the people getting out of the Mercedes behind us. The restaurant was dark, moody, and pretentious, exactly Leo's style. We found them at a round table in the back corner. They looked frayed. That was the only word for it. On the surface, they were the same polished Whitmores. Leo was in a suit, RRLO in a cocktail dress, Bella in white, always white as if she were the Pope. But if you looked closer, you saw the cracks. Leo's collar was a little loose around his neck, as if he had lost weight rapidly. RRLO's smile was tight, her eyes darting around the room to see who was watching. Bella looked manic, her fingers drumming incessantly on the table. When they saw me, their expression shifted from anxiety to a familiar, comfortable disdain. Then they saw Elias. Who is this? Leo asked. Not standing up to greet us, I said. Family dinner, Clara, not bring a stray to dinner. This is Elias, I said, calmly, taking the seat opposite them. Elias sat next to me, placing his cane against the table with a deliberate thud. He's my neighbor and my advisor. Advisor, Bella snorted. On what? How to collect Social Security. He looks like a fisherman. I advise on various matters. Elias said, his voice mild. He flagged down a waiter. Sparkling water, lemon. No ice. Fine, RRLO sighed, waving her hand dismissively. Let him stay. We don't have time to argue. We have business to discuss. We ordered for you, Leo said. The chicken, it's the most economical option. I'm not hungry, I said. What do you want? Leo leaned forward. He clasped his hands together, trying to summon the aura of the powerful CEO he used to be. We've been thinking about you, Clara. We know it's been hard living in that shack alone. With no money. It's been educational, I said. I'm sure, RRLO said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Look, we're willing to let bygones be bygones. We're a family and families help each other. Cut the crap, Mom, I said. The last time we had dinner, you evicted me and called me street garbage. What do you want? Bella slammed her hand on the table. I fired my wedding planner. She shrieked. They tried to charge me an extra $10,000 for the floral arch installation. She said my vision was structurally impossible. She's incompetent, and I asked, and Leo interjected, smoothing the tablecloth. We need someone to step in, someone who understands aesthetics, someone who can manage the vendors, coordinate the setup, and make sure the day runs smoothly. I stared at them. They couldn't be serious. You want me to plan the wedding? I asked. The wedding I'm not invited to. Oh. You're invited now, RRLO said quickly. Of course you are, but we need you to take the lead. You're good at details. You're organized. And frankly, you owe us. I owe you. I felt a laugh bubbling up in my throat. I owe you for what the trauma for the years we supported you. Leo snapped. Look, here's the deal. You come back to the city. You take over the wedding logistics. You manage the florists, the caterers, the seating charts. It's a full-time job for the next 3 weeks. In exchange, he paused for dramatic effect. In exchange, we will let you move into the servants' quarters in the new condo building. RRLO finished beaming as if she had just offered me a palace. It's a studio on the ground floor. It's small, but it has a window. You can live there rent-free for 3 months while you get back on your feet. You can get a job in the city. Again, you can be civilized. So I said, slowly clarifying the terms. You want me to be your unpaid wedding planner, work 16-hour days to fix the mess Bella created, and my payment is the privilege of living in a closet in your building for 90 days. It's better than sleeping in a rotting cabin with rats. Bella sneered. Honestly, Clara, you should be begging us. You look pale. You look like you haven't eaten a real meal in months. Your clothes are baggy. She gestured to my cashmere trousers. She thought they were baggy because they weren't skin-tight fast fashion. She had no idea. I looked at Elias. He was watching them with a look of pure fascination, like a scientist observing a new species of poisonous toad. I have a counter proposal, I said. Leo looked surprised. A counter proposal? You're in no position to negotiate, Clara, I think. I am, I said. My counter proposal is this. No, the table went silent. No. RRLO blinked. No, I repeated. I won't plan your wedding. I won't manage your vendors, and I certainly won't live in your servants' quarters. I like my cabin. It has a great view. You ungrateful little brat. Leo's face turned a dangerous shade of red. We are offering you a lifeline. We are trying to save you from destitution. I'm not destitute, Leo, I said quietly. You are, he shouted, causing the entire restaurant to turn toward us. You are nothing without me. You are a failed designer living in a shack that I paid for. I own you. I made you. You didn't make me. I said, my voice steady, rising above his anger like a rock in a stream. You broke me, and I put myself back together, and the pieces are stronger than the original. You're making a mistake, RRLO hissed. When winter comes and that roof collapses. Don't call us. We won't answer. I won't call, I assured her. And don't think you're coming to the wedding as a guest then, Bella yelled. If you don't work, you don't come. You're uninvited again. That's fine, I said. I'll probably be busy that weekend anyway. I have a lot of gardening to do. I stood up. Elias stood up with me. You're walking away, Leo asked, incredulous. From rent-free housing from your family. I'm walking away from a transaction, I said. You don't have a family, Dad. You have employees, and I quit. I looked down at the table. The waiter had placed the bottle of sparkling water there, unopened. For the water, I said. I reached into my purse. I didn't pull out a crumpled $5 bill. I pulled out a crisp fresh $100 bill, one of the many I now carried since my first check from Elias had cleared. I dropped it onto the table. It fluttered down and landed right on top of Bella's hand. "Keep the change," I said. "Put it toward the ice." "Sculpture, I hear they're melting." I turned and walked away. Elias walked beside me, his cane tapping a rhythmic beat on the floor. We didn't speak until we were outside under the awning, waiting for the valet to bring the Jaguar. That Elias said, a slow grin spreading across his face, was worth the drive. Did you see his face? I asked, the adrenaline finally starting to crash into a wave of giddiness. He looked like he was going to have a stroke. He's scared. Elias said he smells the end coming, even if he won't admit it. He needed you to work for free because he can't afford to pay anyone else. You just cut off his last supply line. The Jaguar pulled up. I got in. As we drove away, I looked back at the restaurant window. I could see them arguing. Bella was crying. Leo was drinking the wine violently. RRLO was staring at the $100 bill on the table. They were miserable. In their expensive clothes and their fancy restaurant, they were trapped in a prison of their own making. And I was free. Part 4 is going to be interesting, Elias mused as we hit the highway. Why? I asked. Because he said, shifting gears. I made a few calls while you were in the restroom. I found out who the main investor is for the resort development project, the one that resonied your land. Who is it? A consortium called Pacific Blue, Elias said, and they are looking for a local liaison, someone to be the face of the project, someone to announce the partnership. And an Elias smiled in the dark. I told them I knew the owner of the prime lot. I told them she was available. They want to make the announcement public soon. How soon? The same weekend as the wedding, Elias said. In fact, I happen to know that Pacific Blue is one of the sponsors for the charity gala that your father is desperately trying to impress. At the wedding reception, half the board will be there. I stared at him. The pieces clicked into place. The universe wasn't just giving me a win, it was handing me a microphone. So I said, cold, thrilled shiver running down my spine. I guess I am going to the wedding after all. Oh, yes, Elias said, but not as the maid. You're going as the landlord. The drive home felt different. The cabin wasn't just a refuge anymore. It was a headquarters. The rotten shack was about to become the cornerstone of an empire, and Leo Whitmore was about to learn that the liability he discarded was the only asset that mattered. We pulled into the driveway just as the moon broke through the clouds, illuminating the jagged cliffs. They looked dangerous. They looked beautiful. They looked exactly like me. I went inside, greeted Rusty, and walked straight to the calendar on the wall. I circled the date of the wedding in red. Marker, Judgment Day. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is hot and messy. What I felt was cold and crystalline. I was going to walk into that ballroom, and I was going to burn their house of cards down with a single sentence. Outline approved, I whispered to the empty room. Right now, the wedding invitation had promised an evening of royal elegance. But as Elias and I pulled the vintage Jaguar up to the valet stand of the Grand View Hotel, the air smelled less like royalty and more like desperation. It was a humid Saturday in late August. The hotel was one of those places that used to be nice in the 90s, but now relied on heavy drapes to hide the water stains. Bella had insisted on it because it had the largest ballroom in the city, and she needed a stage big enough for her ego. I stepped out of the car. The valet's jaw actually dropped. I wasn't wearing the baggy trousers from dinner. I was wearing the dress. It was a custom piece I had commissioned from a designer I met through my new network. A floor-length gown of deep emerald green silk that moved like liquid water. It was backless, elegant, and screamed old money in a way Bella's sequins never could. I wore the pearl studs, my hair swept up in a loose architectural chignon. Elias offered me his arm. He looked distinguished in his tuxedo, the sharp lines making him look less like a gardener and more like the shark he was. Ready to crash the party, he murmured. We were invited, I reminded him, a cold smile touching my lips. They just didn't know who they were inviting. We walked into the ballroom. It was a sensory assault. There were thousands of flowers, but they were already starting to wilt in the heat of the room. The lighting was a garish purple, and in the center of the dance floor stood an 8-foot ice sculpture of a swan that was weeping water onto the parquet floor. Heads turned as we entered. I felt the ripple of whispers move through the crowd. Who is that? Is that the sister I thought she was? Didn't they say she was homeless? My mother RRLO intercepted us near the shrimp tower. She was wearing a silver dress that was too tight, her face plastered with a layer of makeup that couldn't hide the anxiety in her eyes. When she saw me, her smile faltered, then fixed itself into a rich of condescension. CL, she hissed, pulling me aside away from a group of wealthy-looking men. You came and my God, did you rent that dress? Be careful with the shrimp cocktail sauce. If you stain it, you'll never get your deposit back. Hello, mother, I said, my voice smooth. You look tense. I am not tense. She snapped, looking around wildly. Everything is perfect. Bella is happy. Leo is securing the future of this family tonight. Just stay out of the way. Don't embarrass us. Go sit at table 42. It's near the kitchen. I think I'll mingle, I said, stepping around her. I walked through the room like a ghost, returning to haunt the living. I saw people I had known my whole life, aunts, uncles, family, friends. They looked at me with confusion. They had been told the narrative. Chara is unstable. Clara is a failure. Clara is living in squalor. My presence radiating calm and wealth disrupted their reality. I found Leo holding court near the bar. He was sweating profusely, clutching a scotch, talking loudly to a group of 3 men. I recognized them immediately. They were the board members of Pacific Blue, the resort consortium. They were the men Elias had called, and that's why Whitmore Holdings is the perfect partner. Leo was saying, his voice booming. I have a keen eye for assets. I know when to buy, when to hold, and when to trim the fat. I run a lean operation. Efficiency is key. Trim the fat, one of the investors repeated, looking bored. Is that what you call it? Absolutely. Leo grinned. I recently liquidated some dead-weight properties. Old sentimental garbage. You have to be ruthless to succeed in this market. Hello, father, I said, stepping into the circle. Leo jumped. He spun around, his eyes widening when he saw me. For a second, he looked terrified. Then he puffed up his chest. Clara, he said, his tone warning. I'm in a meeting. This is strictly for the adults. I know, I said, turning to the investors. I'm Clara Whitmore, Leo's daughter, the landscaping daughter, the lead investor. A man named Mr. Sterling said. He looked at me with new interest. Elias Thorne speaks very highly of you. Leo choked on his scotch. You know Thorne, the old hermit next door. Mr. Thorne is a legend in coastal real estate law, Sterling said coldly. And he tells us you have an eye for coastal preservation, Ms. Whitmore. I do, I smiled. I believe the land tells you what it's worth if you listen. Leo laughed nervously. She's a dreamer. Always playing in the dirt. Go find your seat, Clara. We're discussing serious capital. I didn't move. I just sipped the champagne I had plucked from a passing tray. I'll see you at the speeches, Dad. I walked away, leaving him confused and agitated. I found Elias at table 42. It was indeed near the kitchen doors, where the smell of stale grease wafted out every time a server exited. We sat down. They're biting. Elias whispered. Sterling texted me. He says Leo is trying to sell him a bridge to nowhere. He's pitching his own company as solvent, but they know he's leveraged against the condo. Then the music swelled. The bridal march began. Bella entered. She looked beautiful in the way a doll looks. Beautiful, perfect. Plastic and vacant. She walked down the aisle to the altar set up on the stage. Her groom, a man named Mark, who worked in finance and had the personality of a wet napkin, looked like he was trying to calculate an exit strategy. The ceremony was long and performative. They read vows that were clearly written by copywriter. I promise to be your queen, Bella said, and to let you worship me. I saw a few guests exchange uncomfortable glances. After the ceremony, the dinner began. It was a disaster. The air conditioning in the ballroom malfunctioned, and the temperature began to rise. The ice swan lost its head, crashing onto the floor. With a wet thud, Bella screamed. Fix it, she shrieked at a waiter, a young boy who couldn't have been more than 19. Glue it back on. Do something, you idiot. Ma'am, it's ice, the boy stammered. I can't glue ice, don't talk back to me. Bella yelled, her face turning red, her veins bulging in her neck. She grabbed a glass of red wine from the table and threw it. It missed the waiter, but it splashed across the white tablecloth and onto the dress of a woman sitting nearby, the wife of one of Leo's potential clients. The room went silent. Bella didn't apologize, she just pointed at the waiter. Get out of my sight. You ruined my wedding. I saw phone go up. A guest at table 5 was recording, then another, then another. The perfect princess mask had slipped, and the internet was about to feast. Leo rushed to the microphone on the stage, trying to salvage the mood. A passion, he boomed, tapping the mic. My daughter has passion. That's the Whitmore spirit, perfectionism. He cleared his throat, wiping sweat from his forehead. Welcome, everyone. Tonight is a celebration of legacy. When I look at Bella, I see the future. I see the result of proper investment. We witters no value. We know that you have to nurture the prize roses and well pull the weeds. He glanced at me in the back of the room. A few people turned. I have built an empire. Leo continued, his voice rising. I have made difficult choices. I have sacrificed. But looking at this room, looking at the wealth and power here, I know I was right. I am rich, not just in money, but in judgment. He raised his glass to the Whitmore dynasty. To the dynasty, a few sycophants echoed. Excuse me. A voice cut through the room. It wasn't a shout, it was a gavel bang. Elias stood up from our table in the back. He didn't need a microphone. His courtroom voice carried to the back row. Mr. Whitmore, Elias said, walking slowly toward the center of the room. I believe there is a slight error in your valuation. Leo squinted against the spotlight. Who is that Thorne? Sit down. You old drunk security. I wouldn't do that. Mr. Sterling stood up from the VIP table. Let him speak. Leo froze. He looked from Sterling to Elias. Aaliyah stopped in the middle of the dance floor, right next to the puddle of the decapitated swan. You speak of judgment. Leo, Elias said, you speak of knowing value. You told this room you know when to trim the fat. You told your investors you liquidated a worthless asset to your estranged daughter. It was a shack. Leo laughed, trying to rally the crowd. A tax liability, I did her a favor. That shack, Elias said, pointing a finger at me where I sat calm and green like the ocean, sits on 5 acres of granite bedrock at the tip of Harbor Pine. Are you aware, Leo, that the Coastal Commission rezoned that land last month? Leo blinked. Rezoned? What are you talking about? It's erosion land. It was, Elias corrected, until the new survey. It is now designated prime mixed-use hospitality, and I am pleased to announce. Elias turned to Mr. Sterling. He saw that Pacific Blue has officially entered into a land lease agreement with the owner of that property. The room went deadly silent. You could hear the hum of the broken air conditioner. The owner, Leo whispered. He looked at me. Yes, Elias smiled. Ms. Clara Whitmore. The lease was signed this morning. The initial valuation of the land, just the dirt, Leo, not the house, is $10 million. The number hung in the air. $10 million. Leo's face didn't just turn pale, it turned gray. It looked like the blood had been drained from his body with a syringe. He gripped the podium, his knuckles white. 10, he croaked. And the partnership for the resort, Elias continued, twisting the knife, includes a 20% equity stake for Clara. She isn't just the landlord. She is the partner. She is the Pacific Blue liaison for the entire coast. Bella stood up, knocking her chair over. That's my money, she screamed, her voice shredding the silence. Daddy gave that house to me first. He only gave it to her because it was trash. It's mine, you can't take it. He signed the deed. Bella, I said, speaking for the first time. I didn't yell, I stayed seated. I have the transfer, I have the title, and I have the waiver you all made me sign. Remember, Clara Whitmore waives all rights to future inheritance in exchange for the cliffside property. I didn't know. Leo shouted, panic taking over. I didn't know it was worth anything. You tricked me. You defrauded me. You called it a rotten pile of wood on a mudslide. I quoted him. You evicted me. You told me I was garbage. You didn't lose that money because I tricked you, Leo. You lost it because you were too arrogant to look beneath the surface. Mr. Sterling walked up to the stage. He looked at Leo with pure disgust. You gave away a $10 million asset for free because you didn't do your due diligence, Sterling asked. And you want me to trust you with my capital? It was a mistake, Leo pleaded, grabbing Sterling's sleeve. I can fix it. We can sue her. She's my daughter. I can force her to. She's your business partner's landlord, Sterling said, pulling his arm away. And frankly, she seems like the only Whitmore with any business sense. We're pulling the funding, Leo. The deal is dead. Number Leo howled. You can't. I've leveraged everything. If you pull out, the bank takes the condo. The bank calls the loans. Then I suggest you start packing, Sterling said. He turned to me and raised a glass. Ms. Whitmore. Excellent dress. We'll see you at the site on Monday. I look forward to it. I nodded. The room erupted. It wasn't polite whispers anymore. It was chaos. The investors were walking out. The guests were pulling out their phones, checking the viral video of Bella screaming at the waiter, which was already trending on Twitter under Bridezilla meltdown. Bella was on the floor sobbing into her chalice skirt, screaming at Mark to do something. Mark, looking at the imploding family fortune, did the only rational thing. He took off his veneer, dropped it on the table, and walked out the exit door. Mark, Bella shrieked. Mark, he didn't look back. I stood up. Elias offered me his arm again. I think our work here is done, he said. We walked toward the door. Leo was still on stage, slumped over the podium, a broken man. RRLO was staring at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. As I passed her, I stopped. You were right, Mom, I said. The wedding was unforgettable. I walked out into the night air. It was heavy and hot, but I felt cool. I felt clean. The fallout was faster than I expected. It was an avalanche. By Monday morning, the video of Bella throwing the wine glass had 5 million views. The internet named her the Red Wine Witch. She was fired from her marketing job. By Tuesday, nobody wanted a PR nightmare on their payroll. By Wednesday, the bank called Leo's loans. Without the Pacific Blue capital, his house of cards collapsed. The investments he had bragged about were revealed to be high-risk failures. He declared bankruptcy on Friday. I was back at the cliffside when the final blow landed. I was standing on the deck, with the architects looking at the blueprints for the new eco-villas that would be built on the North Ridge, far away from my cabin, which would remain private. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but I knew who it was. The gate buzzer sounded. I looked at the security monitor. There they were. Leo, RRLO, and Bella. They were standing at the iron gate Elias and I had installed last week. They weren't wearing tuxedos or sequins. Leo was wearing a wrinkled polo shirt. RRLO looked 10 years older, her roots showing. Bella was wearing sunglasses, probably to hide swollen eyes. Behind them was a U-Haul truck. I pressed the intercom button. Yes, Clara, Leo's voice crackled through the speaker. He sounded broken. Clara, please open the gate. Why? I asked. They took the condo. RRLO sobbed. They locked us out this morning. We have nowhere to go. We have the truck, but we have no home. We're family, Clara, Bella said, her voice trembling. I'm sorry about the wedding. I'm sorry about the name calling. Just let us stay in the guest rooms just for a while until Daddy gets back on his Feet, I looked at them on the screen. I looked at the U-Haul packed with whatever they had salvaged. I remembered. The night I packed my sedan in the rain. I remembered the check for $50,000. I remembered street garbage. I'm sorry, I said. But the cliffside isn't a shelter, Clara. Leo yelled, anger flashing through his desperation. You owe us. That land was mine. I gave it to you. You stole my life. You gave it to me, I corrected. And I made it a life. You had your chance, Dad. You had 10 years to love me. You had 10 years to see value in me. You only see value now because I have a checkbook. We're your parents. RRLO. Wailed, where are we supposed to go? I hear there's a motel on the highway. I said it's affordable. Or maybe I paused. Maybe you can find a basement somewhere. I hear they go for about $800 a month. Clara, please, Bella screamed. The shack is for family, I said, my voice hard as granite, and I don't see any family at the gate, just guests who overstayed their welcome. I released the button. I turned off the monitor. The architects were looking at me awkward and silent. Everything okay, Miss Whitmore? One of them asked. I looked out at the ocean. Rusty was chasing a seagull down the beach, barking happily. Elias was walking up the path, holding a bottle of vintage champagne. The sun was breaking through the clouds, lighting up the golden cliffs that were now my legacy. I took a deep breath. The air was salt and roses. Yes, I said, smiling. Everything is perfect now about that retaining wall. I didn't destroy them. I just stopped saving them. And in the end, that was the most brutal punishment of all. They had to live with themselves while I finally got to live with me. You. No, looking back at that moment at the gate, watching the U-Haul truck idle while my family begged for the very shelter they had mocked, it would be easy to say that was a moment of victory. But it wasn't just about winning, it was about clarity. For 30 years, I looked at myself through Leo and Bella's eyes. I saw what they saw, a crack in the pavement, something small, something broken. Something that needed to be covered up or cast aside. I spent decades trying to paint over my own cracks, to please them, trying to buy their love with obedience and silence. But the lesson I learned at the cliffside is simple. Value is not about appearance, it's about the foundation. My father looked at that cabin and saw rot. He saw peeling paint and a crumbling porch. He saw a liability. He didn't bother to check the granite bedrock underneath. He didn't understand that the things that look the messiest on the surface often have the strongest roots. He made the mistake of confusing value with glitter. He chased the shiny, shallow things, the sequins, the status, the approval of strangers, and he threw away the solid ground beneath his feet. There are so many people out there right now who feel like I did. Maybe you are the scapegoat in your family. Maybe you're the one who is always giving and never receiving. Maybe you feel like you're shouting into a void, begging to be seen, begging to be loved. If that is you, I need you to hear this. Stop trying to prove your worth to people who do not have the capacity to calculate it. You cannot force someone to appreciate a diamond if they are only looking for rhinestone. My revenge wasn't that I became rich. My revenge was that I became whole. The moment I stopped trying to save them, the moment I stopped being the glue holding their fragile egos together, I became free. And yes, they fell apart, but that wasn't my fault. That was gravity. Real family isn't about blood. It's not about obligation or who you owe for raising you. Real family is the people like Elias who see you covered in mud and sweat and say, you have potential. Real family is the people who stand beside you in the storm, not the ones who lock you out in the rain. So do not be afraid to walk away. Do not be afraid to take the rotten parts of your life and scrub them until they shine. You might be terrifyingly alone for a moment, but I promise you, the view from the other side is worth it. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to build your own peace from the wreckage of someone else's judgment, please take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We are building a community here, a chosen family of our own, and I want you to be a part of it. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded of their own worth today. And if you want to see another story about someone who was underestimated and rose from the ashes to take absolute control of their destiny, click the video on your screen right now. It's a story about a woman whose silence was louder than any scream. Trust me, you don't want to miss how she handles the people who betrayed her. I'll see you there.